When it comes to AI, there's a lot of trepidation around it taking our jobs, and obviously, many professions will be displaced through automation. So, how do we solve that problem? How do we address that?
So there's a lot packed into that question. One, better our AI and our robotics than China's AI and China's robotics, because don't want to have a whole country economy displaced. I think you can tax robotics. I've got a company, High Robotics, out of Kansas City, and they have welding machines, welding robots, and they basically charge what you would charge a welder. Only they haven't displaced any yet because they work the overnight shifts as opposed to the 8 hours. And so it's worked out okay, but taxing them per hour like we would with FICA tax for human employees, I think is what we're going to have to do. And that starts building our base for Social Security. And I'm not a fan of UBI except for stay-at-home parents or partners, and so or long-term care partners. But having to come up with make good work, if you will, or federal jobs programs that these taxes will then in turn pay for. So for instance, right now with this just horrific unemployment and underemployment, a robotics tax would help us bring manufacturing here that protects this country against being preempted by external manufacturers like we talked about with drugs and other things. And that in turn helps us pay for programs like tracking and tracing or testing or long-term care or support for those who are vulnerable to the virus right now. So subsidizing those jobs. And I think we'll have to extend those make work programs. And we have things like the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps that allow us to hire and do community projects. And we're going to have to take those robotic taxes and use those to subsidize these jobs that are going to be more community-driven jobs than traditional jobs during some interim period of disruption. Now, long-term, it tends to work itself out, right? Because that whole infrastructure and ecosystem for robots requires a whole lot more, from real estate to power to programming to you name it, right? And then I'd also add in terms of revenue generation, a cloud tax, because that's effectively becomes a tax on AI / machine learning, right? Where it consumes so much power and so much processing power to do a 1 or 2%, on your Amazon AWS bill, I think is fair. And I think it goes toward, and it could be put towards programs for those who are displaced by this technology.
So for the robotics tax, that's a very interesting idea. How would you do it on the basis of number of hours worked, or how would you do it?
I would do it for hours, just by the hour. If you have a robot that does what a human once did, then on that human you paid your 6.2% or 3%, whatever it is, FICA by the employee and the same by the employer. I would take that 12 point whatever it is percent and take 3% of it and put it towards research, and 9% of it and put it towards the Treasury / Social Security fund to pay for future programs.